welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Well, it's a good day in the shop because it is new machine day. I've been trying to keep my eye open for a tool and cutter grinder for quite some time, and I've seen them before at reasonably decent prices, and unfortunately in all of those cases I didn't pull the trigger and bring any of them home. There was a really nice brown and sharp at an auction I was at some months ago, and I got outbid, but my bid really wasn't all that high, and I still wonder if I had raised my bid, would I have come home with it, and been kind of kicking myself ever since. And there was some additional tooling that came with that machine that didn't come with this one. But c'est la vie. It is what it is, and I have to move on. So when I saw this one come up at auction recently, I was cautiously optimistic that I might be able to bring it home for the right price. And obviously I did. And the right price for me is often much, much less than what somebody else may be willing to pay for a machine like this. And that's mostly because I look for machines that might need a little bit of attention. I don't mind trading sweat equity for cash value. So this one came home for around $100, about $120 total. Of course, the risk that you take when you're buying some of these things at auction or at surplus dealers is you really don't know what condition they're in or even if they run. But this is a KO Lee BA800 tool and cutter grinder. I'm not exactly sure when it was made. I'm not sure if the serial number here gives us any indication. Perhaps the first two numbers might indicate that it was made in 1951. I'm not really sure. Well, it sits on this base that's got a door on it. Inside of it, there were some additional grinding cups, some other wheels, and a few other things. I'm not exactly sure what they're for. Well, these KO Lee catalogs were tucked in here. So maybe if I could date these, it might help me date the machine. Along with some Cincinnati grinding cups, there was a stack of these pieces of paper. I think they're called blotters, I think is what they're referred to. And there was this envelope with these little metal shims or something in them. I'm not sure what they're for. If you know, leave me a comment down below, because I've never seen them before. Of course, I've never used a cutter grinder before. Well, looking at the grinding head, there's this cap that's on the back of it, and I think that's for mounting an additional grinding wheel. I'm not really sure. The spindle bearings feel really good. There doesn't seem to be any play in them, at least nothing that I can feel. Again, I'm not really familiar with these motors specifically, but it's a half horsepower three-phase motor, so there should be no issue with me being able to run this. And I do believe it was wired for 240 volts when it was last used. The only piece of tooling per se that came with it was what I believe this is referred to as an air bearing from Weldon, another Cleveland based company. There was a drawbar of some sort down the middle of it. I'm not exactly sure what attachments would be needed for this. I do understand they're used to grind end mills, side cutting end mills. It essentially floats on compressed air. So I'll hook up my air compressor to it and see what it feels like. It doesn't really feel all that smooth, so it might be either dirty or it might be clapped out. I won't know until I'm able to really kind of learn a little bit more about these things, first of all, and possibly take it apart and see what's going on inside. Maybe it just needs a good clean. Well, the table pivots, and on one end of it is a couple of graduations. One of them is marked as degrees, and the other one, I couldn't see it, but it might be inches per foot. Well, on the other end of the table is what I think is some kind of a stop, and normally this thing would have some attachments that would go in the holes that would lock the table in a particular position. Well, there's a set screw in the middle of the table, and I'm thinking if I loosen that, it might let me pivot the table, but loosening it just a little, I can't get any movement in the table at all. So I don't know if there's something else I need to loosen or if it's just stuck. I'll figure that out at a later date. Well, the table moves back and forth freely, so that's a good sign. And I understand that this knob, if I pull it out, it puts it in sort of a high speed mode. So the handle has uh, two speeds, and when it's pushed in, it's a little more finer movement. Well, the handle for the saddle moves fairly freely. Might be a little bit sticky. I think that could be from dirt or lack of oil. And the hand wheel that raises and lowers the grinding head is working perfectly too. I have a plug wired onto the end of the cable that came on the machine that fits a receptacle in my rotary phase converter. So nothing left to do here now but to go ahead and power up the phase converter and give this thing a try, see how the motor sounds. Well, I don't know if this comes across on YouTube as much as it does here standing next to it, but it sounds great. It's got a really nice, soft hum to it. I don't know if forward is correct or reverse is correctly wired, but it is moving in a direction. I guess that's something that I'll have to figure out. Both directions work just fine. The little rubber boot that's around the switch looks like it's ripped, but I'm sure I can find a replacement for that. Well, I don't hear or feel any vibrations, and the motor is pretty cool to the touch right now. I think we're going to let this run for a little while I take a look at something else that also came with it. Well, sitting next to the cutter grinder and as part of the auction was this Kennedy toolbox. And inside of it are some things that I think might be related to the air bearing, but I'm not exactly sure. Well, these kind of look like some kind of a collet system, but quite frankly, I don't know. I don't know if this stuff was shop made, it's sitting in this little wooden rack, or if it's something that might have come from Weldon as part of the air bearing. I still have to do some research on it. But if you have any inclination as to what this stuff could be, please leave me a comment. Maybe give me a head start on where to look. Well, this motor's been running for a while and there's no appreciable heat coming off of this at all. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think this is going to turn out to be a great new addition to the shop. Well, in the cabinet, as you saw before, were these catalogs. And this one right here, actually, I think is a newer edition of machines than the one that I have. So I don't think this is going to help me date the machine at all. Now, this one here looks like it might be a little closer in age. The machine pictured is a little bit different. So again, I'm not sure where this thing dates, but it does show a bunch of different kinds of tooling that you can get with these cutter grinders. Most of the things listed here I wouldn't know what to do with, or at least not yet. I think I could eventually learn how to use some of these attachments, but I think it'll be a while. I think one of the interesting things to look at here are what these prices were when this stuff was printed. It's crazy to think of just how expensive they really were when you translate them into today's dollars. Where some of these attachments might end up being necessary for me is when I get to the point where I want to start using this machine for what I wanted it for, which is grinding and sharpening high speed steel lathe tooling, end mills, milling cutters, slitting saws, those kinds of things, rather than buying a bunch of new cutting tools. I think it would be more fun to learn how to sharpen the ones that I have. Well, for now, it's going to sit here next to the surface grinder, which is still a project waiting for me to get to. Hopefully, that will happen soon. But until then, it's just going to have to rest here next to the surface grinder until I can start disassembling and cleaning it and getting it ready for me to learn how to use it. If you have one of these machines or have used different kinds of tooling for them, or can give me any kind of hints or tricks or tips, please drop a comment down below. Well, it is the best day in the shop because it is a new machine day, but any day in the shop is the best day in the shop. But that's going to be it for this one. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you are not a subscriber, and a special thank you to all those that support the channel financially through Patreon or PayPal. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.